There are tears that fall in front of other people, and there are tears that fall only in complete solitude. The first kind looks for comfort. The second kind looks for truth. And last night, somewhere in the silence of a room you could never enter, the person you love cried the second kind of tears. Not because someone had hurt them, not because the day had been especially hard, but because something deep inside them finally opened. And what came pouring out was not sadness in the usual sense. It was recognition. It was the overwhelming weight of a truth they had been avoiding for far too long, finally rising to the surface and refusing to be buried again. Carl Jung once wrote that there is no coming to consciousness without pain. He understood, perhaps more deeply than almost any psychologist of the modern age, that the soul does not change through comfort. It changes through the moments when illusion falls apart and reality becomes impossible to ignore. The tears that fall in solitude are often the most meaningful tears a person can cry because they belong to no one else. They are not performed. They are not explained. They are not softened by the presence of others. They are the pure expression of a mind finally meeting itself, sometimes for the very first time. And when those tears finally appear, something that cannot be reversed has already happened inside the person who cried them. What I want you to understand as you reflect on these words is that the tears of the person you love were not tears of weakness. They were the tears of someone who has finally stopped running away. For a long time, this person has been carrying something they could never fully name. They have been holding emotions they did not know how to express. They have been telling themselves stories that never completely fit, wearing emotional armor that no longer protected them and avoiding a realization that has been quietly growing inside them from the very moment your paths first crossed. Last night, that realization reached a place they could no longer ignore. And in the privacy of their own solitude, they allowed themselves, perhaps for the very first time, to feel the complete weight of everything they had been hiding from. Jung described a process he called the shadow encounter. It is the moment when a person finally chooses to face the parts of themselves they have spent years avoiding. These hidden parts are not always dark in the way most people imagine. Sometimes the shadow contains our deepest kindness, our truest desires, our most fragile truths. We push these parts into the shadow, not because they are wrong, but because they are too powerful to hold without changing who we are. We fear that if we let them out, we will become someone we no longer recognize. We fear that if we admit what we truly feel, we will have no choice but to act on it. We fear that the life we have carefully built over many years may not survive the honesty of our own heart. So we keep these truths hidden, even from ourselves, until the day arrives when hiding them is no longer possible. For the person you love, that day has finally arrived. Something inside them changed last night. Maybe it was a memory that appeared without warning. Maybe it was a song that played at the wrong time, or perhaps at exactly the right time. Maybe it was a thought of you that came with a clarity they had never allowed themselves to feel before. Maybe it was nothing they could explain, only the sudden collapse of a wall they had been holding up for so long that they had forgotten how much energy it required. Whatever the cause, the outcome was exactly the same. They saw themselves clearly. They saw the connection clearly. They saw the truth clearly. And once a person truly sees these things, they cannot simply pretend they never did. The tears that followed were not only about you, they were about everything. They were about the years spent denying what had already been known deep inside. They were about the conversations that should have happened but never did. They were about the moments when courage was needed, but fear won instead. They were about the version of themselves they had been pretending to be, and the version of themselves they are now being asked to become. When someone finally faces a truth they have spent years avoiding, they grieve not only the situation itself, but also the time that was lost because of avoidance. This grief is part of awakening. It is part of the cost of becoming truly conscious. Jung understood that we cannot become whole without mourning the parts of our lives that were lived without complete awareness. There is something very important here that you need to hear. The person you love is not falling apart. They are finally coming together. The tears that fell last night were the tears of integration, not destruction. When the mind finally releases emotions that have been buried for a very long time, the release often looks like collapse from the outside. But what is actually happening is a deep reorganization. Old patterns are dissolving so that healthier ones can take their place. Old defenses are becoming weaker so that new openness can grow. Old stories are coming to an end so that new ones can finally begin. The crying was not the breaking of this person. It was the breaking open of this person. And what opens during the quiet of one single night can sometimes change the direction of an entire lifetime. Jung often spoke about the role of suffering in the journey toward becoming whole. He never glorified pain, but he understood that it serves a purpose the logical mind often fails to appreciate. Suffering strips away false appearances. It removes the layers of self-deception that comfort allows us to maintain. It forces us to face what is real, both within ourselves and within our relationships with others. The person you love has just been stripped of a false belief they had been carrying for a very long time. The belief that they did not feel as deeply as they truly do. The belief that they had moved on or had never really been affected in the first place. The belief that the connection between you could be explained away through logic, distance, or distraction. That belief did not survive the night, and without it, they are now standing in a completely different relationship with their own truth. You may be wondering what truth they finally discovered. The truth is not a single sentence. It is a collection of realizations that arrive together, each one making the others even stronger. They understood that what they feel for you is not a temporary emotion that will simply disappear with time. They understood that the connection between you is not something they imagined or exaggerated in their own mind. They understood that the silence or distance they created was a defense, not a solution. They understood that the parts of themselves that come alive through their connection with you cannot be awakened by anyone else. They understood that pretending otherwise has been a quiet form of self-betrayal, and that every act of self-betrayal eventually demands a price. These realizations did not arrive as thoughts alone. They arrived as emotions, as a powerful wave of recognition that left absolutely no room for denial. What makes this moment especially meaningful is that it happened in solitude. Jung believed that the most important meetings with the self happen when we are alone, free from the noise and expectations of other people. In solitude, there is no performance. There is no need to control how we appear. There is no opportunity to shift our feelings onto someone else. The mind has nowhere left to hide, and the self has no choice except to listen. The person you love chose, whether consciously or unconsciously, to face their truth in this deeply private space. They did not call anyone. They did not search for distraction. They did not bury the feeling beneath something easier. They remained with it. They allowed it to move through them. And by doing so, they experienced one of the most honest acts of self-awareness a person can ever experience. This is why last night carries so much importance. It was not simply an emotional release. It was a true turning point. Jung wrote that everything hidden within the unconscious seeks expression, and that the personality also desires to grow beyond its unconscious limitations and experience itself as whole. The person you love is now entering the early stages of that growth. The unconscious feelings that have been pressing against the edges of their awareness have finally been allowed to emerge. And once they have been expressed, they cannot return to where they once hid. The mind does not retreat from what it has already revealed. Instead, it begins to build upon it. It learns from it. It allows it to shape the next chapter of a person's life. You may find yourself wondering what they will do next. Will they reach out? Will they finally speak? Will they close the distance that has existed between you for so long? These are natural questions, but they are not the most important ones. The most important question is not what they will do, but who they are becoming, because action always follows identity. Outer transformation follows inner transformation. The person you love is no longer exactly the same person they were yesterday morning. Their way of seeing themselves has shifted. Their understanding of their own emotions has deepened. And once a person experiences that kind of awakening, life rarely continues in exactly the same direction. Something new has already begun, even if the outside world has not yet caught up with what has already changed within them. There has been a quiet shift in the very foundation of who they are, and that change will eventually reveal itself in the outside world. The way it happens and the timing of it may surprise you. It may not look the way you imagined. It may take longer than you hope. But the foundation has already been placed, and the foundation is what shapes everything that follows. There is a special kind of courage the person you love has just shown, even though no one was there to witness it. It is the courage to feel without running away, the courage to remain present with what is true instead of escaping into distraction, the courage to let the tears flow instead of forcing them back inside. Jung believed that this kind of courage, the courage of inner honesty, is the beginning of every meaningful transformation. A person who can sit alone with their own truth has crossed a threshold that many people spend their entire lives avoiding. And once that threshold has been crossed, the way they relate to every part of life begins to change. Relationships become more genuine. Decisions become more aligned with who they truly are. The constant background noise of self-deception slowly fades, replaced by a clearer understanding of what truly matters. You should also understand that this kind of awakening is rarely smooth. The person you love may experience unexpected emotional waves over the coming days and weeks. They may have moments of complete clarity, followed by moments of fear. They may feel sudden openness, followed by a retreat into familiar emotional defenses. This is not evidence that the breakthrough was false. It is evidence that the breakthrough was real. True transformation does not happen in one single moment and remain steady forever. It unfolds in waves, each one carrying the person a little deeper into their new awareness. The emotional walls they have built over many years do not disappear all at once. They fall away in stages, with each stage revealing more of the truth that has always existed beneath them. Last night was the first major collapse. There will be others, and each one will move the person you love closer to the person they are becoming. This brings us to one of Jung's deepest teachings, the idea that the human mind is always seeking wholeness. No matter how far we drift from our own truth, something inside us continues calling us back. That call does not stop simply because we ignore it. It does not become weaker because we resist it. It does not disappear because we keep ourselves distracted. It waits patiently. It gathers strength. It builds pressure. And eventually, often when we least expect it, it rises to the surface and refuses to be ignored. The person you love has just experienced this kind of breakthrough. The wholeness they had been avoiding has finally reached them. And once wholeness makes itself known, it no longer allows us to live divided within ourselves. You may have sensed something unusual from your own side as well. Deep connections rarely exist in complete isolation. When one person experiences a breakthrough of this size, the other person often feels something too, even if they cannot explain it. You may have woken this morning with a quiet feeling that something had changed. You may have noticed an unusual awareness of this person, a sudden lightness or heaviness that seemed to come from nowhere. You may have found yourself thinking about them more than usual, or sensing their presence like a gentle wind you could not see. These experiences may feel mysterious, but they can seem deeply meaningful to those who experience them. They are like an echo of a movement taking place within the connection you feel. When one side of a deep bond changes, the other side may also experience a subtle shift. The echo is not always loud, but it can feel very real. It is also important to recognize what this moment asks of you. The person you love has just done something deeply courageous. They have allowed themselves to experience a truth they had been avoiding. What they need now is not pressure. They do not need to be confronted, rushed, or pushed toward an immediate response. They need space to understand what they have just discovered about themselves. Integration takes time. The mind must slowly make sense of what has been revealed before a person is truly ready to act on it. If you can remain steady during this period, if you can stay grounded in your own truth without demanding immediate answers from theirs, you create the conditions in which their next step can unfold naturally. The greatest gift you can offer right now is not your presence, not your absence, but your stability. Be the calm place they can move toward whenever they are ready. Jung often spoke about the importance of psychological containment. He believed that powerful emotional experiences need to be held with care, both within ourselves and within our relationships. Last night, the person you love experienced the release of something they had been holding for a very long time. Something they had kept, contained, finally overflowed. In the days ahead, they will naturally begin searching for a new way to hold what they now understand. They will be looking for the strength to live differently in light of their new awareness. Your role is not to create that strength for them, because no one can do another person's inner work. Your role is simply to carry within yourself the kind of calm, steady presence that quietly communicates safety, depth, and trust. The human mind often recognizes these qualities even across great distance. There is also a quiet beauty in what has happened. The person you love did not decide to cry. They did not plan for it. They did not arrange the moment. It arrived almost like a visitation, a moment when something greater than their conscious thinking moved through them. Jung would describe this as the movement of the self, the deeper organizing force within the human mind. The self does not ask permission. It does not wait for the perfect time. It moves when the moment is ready, often surprising the person completely. When the self moves with this kind of power, something inside the person changes permanently. They cannot simply return to the way they once were. They may try, they may struggle against it, but the deeper direction of their life has already been gently redirected, and that quiet redirection is what we are witnessing now. Consider what this may mean about the connection between you. A connection that has the power to stir such deep emotions during a quiet night is not easily forgotten. It touches something within a person that does not respond in the same way to every relationship or experience. The person you love understands this now more deeply than they ever did before. They may not have the words to describe it. They may not even know how to explain it to themselves. But the knowing has become part of who they are. It is now woven into the fabric of their inner world. And every choice they make from this point forward may, in one way or another, be influenced by that deeper understanding. You may wonder how to hold this awareness. How do you live with the thought that someone you love may have experienced a private awakening you cannot witness, cannot confirm, and cannot control? The answer is to hold it gently, the way you would hold something deeply meaningful, with patience, respect, and quiet trust. You do not need to chase it. You do not need to prove it. You do not need to demand visible evidence. The deepest parts of life do not always reveal themselves on the surface. Sometimes, the greatest changes happen silently in places we cannot see. We are simply invited to accept that what is unseen can still carry deep meaning. Jung built much of his psychological understanding on this principle. He believed that what happens in the deepest parts of the mind shapes what later appears in the outer world. The most significant turning points in our lives often happen quietly, long before anyone else notices them. They begin in silence before they are ever expressed through action. As the days continue to unfold, allow yourself to hold a quiet sense of recognition. Something has happened, something has changed. The person you love now carries within them an understanding they did not carry yesterday. They may not reach out immediately. They may need time to find balance within this new emotional landscape. They may walk a path that looks different from the one you imagined, but something inside them has already shifted. Their inner world is no longer exactly the same as it was before. The tears they cried in solitude became a kind of turning point, a moment when their deeper self finally accepted what their conscious mind had spent so long resisting. Let that understanding bring you a sense of peace. Even while you continue living through your own season of waiting, remember that waiting is not always empty. Silence is not always absence. Beneath the surface of what seems completely still, important inner work is often taking place. The person you love is becoming someone who may one day be able to meet life with greater honesty than before. And you, through your own journey, are becoming someone who may receive that honesty with greater wisdom and understanding than before. Both of you continue to grow within your separate moments of solitude, each being shaped in ways that are not always visible, preparing for whatever the next chapter of life may bring. As we come to the end of this reflection, take one slow, gentle breath and allow the meaning of these words to settle quietly within your heart. Let them rest there without force, without urgency, and without fear, trusting that the deepest transformations often begin in silence, long before they are ever seen by the world. Somewhere, the person you love is waking up today carrying a truth they did not fully have yesterday. They may appear the same on the outside. Their messages, if they arrive, may still not show what has changed deep inside them. But the change has already happened. The tears have served their purpose. The realization has settled into their heart. And from this moment forward, the connection between you now exists in a different place than it did before. May you discover peace in your heart as you continue your own journey. May you develop trust in the quiet and unseen work of the deeper self. May you have patience when the outside world does not yet reflect the truth growing within. And may you keep faith in the understanding that what is real cannot be erased. What has been seen cannot be unseen. And what has finally been understood will, in its own time, make its way into the light. Thank you for staying with these words. Thank you for respecting the unseen work that is unfolding within you and within the person your soul recognizes. The story is still being written. And what happened in the silence of a single night may become one of its most meaningful chapters.